My name is Rebecca Hayes, and I was 39 years old when my older sister blocked me from walking into our mother's surgery consultation room, planted herself in front of the frosted glass door at St. Catherine's Hospital in Minneapolis, and said, "Rebecca, you're just the wallet. Don't confuse paying bills with being mom's real support." I still remember the smell of antiseptic and burnt coffee in that hallway, the squeak of rubber soles on polished tile, and the way my mother's faded hospital bracelet dug into my palm because I had been carrying it in my coat pocket like a good luck charm ever since I saved her from a medication mix-up 2 years earlier. Monica stood there in soft gray loungewear and tears she knew how to turn on at the exact right angle. My father Alan hovered behind her like a man waiting for weather to change. Aunt Patricia sat near the family consultation room, pretending to look worried while actually watching me the way people watch a woman they already planned to call cold. I had paid the surgical deposit 3 days earlier. I had fought the insurance denial that would have delayed the procedure by 2 weeks. I had corrected mom's medication list after the cardiology office faxed the wrong dosage to pre-op. I had been on hold with the hospital billing office that very morning before sunrise because a coding error almost doubled her out-of-pocket estimate. And still, my sister looked me in the face and said, "Let people who actually comfort her make the decisions." Before I tell you how the hospital read out the medical power of attorney in front of everyone who tried to shut me out, tell me this. What time is it where you are right now? And where are you watching from? I want to know how far this story travels before I tell you what happens when one daughter cries the loudest in the waiting room, another daughter pays, plans, and protects in silence, and the family decides the quiet one must be useful but never visible. Because that surgery hallway was not the beginning. It was only the first time Monica said out loud what my family had been quietly doing to me for most of my adult life. Growing up, Monica was the emotional daughter. That was the official family title, though of course, nobody said it that way. They said she was soft, sensitive, expressive, intuitive. I was the practical daughter, which in our house meant I remembered forms, tracked appointments, packed snacks, read instructions, noticed mistakes, and got told I was lucky to be good with hard things. If a school form needed signing, I found it. If the utility bill confused my mother, I translated it. If Dad forgot a deadline, I called the office. Monica could cry and be comforted. I could solve and be expected. It looked harmless when we were children. It grew teeth when we became adults. Our mother Elaine used to try to make up for it in private. She would squeeze my hand in the kitchen when Monica was upstairs sobbing about some boyfriend crisis and say, "When people panic, they listen to the loudest voice. I trust the daughter who reads before signing." It should have comforted me. Sometimes it did. Other times, it just sounded like another way of saying I would be carrying the weight while someone else got the sympathy. I loved my mother too much to hold that against her when I was younger. Later, I realized she knew exactly what the family dynamic was and had tried, in the only way she knew, to leave me a record of her trust before illness turned everything into noise. I became a health insurance appeals specialist because paper tells the truth when families do not. That sounds cynical, but it is also practical. I spent years helping people fight denied hospital claims, incorrect coding, surprise balances, pharmacy authorizations, and all the bureaucratic cruelty that falls hardest on sick people too tired to argue. I was good at it because I could read patterns inside chaos, and because my own family had trained me so thoroughly to catch problems before anyone else even admitted there was one. Monica went in the opposite direction. She worked part-time, posted a lot online, cried easily, and always seemed surrounded by women telling her she had such a big heart. She also avoided every job inside a crisis that required waiting on hold, reading line items, comparing medication lists, or opening billing statements without theatrics. Dad, meanwhile, preferred peace over truth. That meant whoever caused less noise got less correction. Monica caused noise, I caused solutions. So Monica was managed gently, and I was leaned on. Aunt Patricia made it worse. She was my mother's older cousin, though in our family she acted like a self-appointed moral referee. Patricia loved phrases like, "This is about family, not paperwork," especially when paperwork exposed the fact that her favorite people were careless, entitled, or lying. The first time I used my own emergency savings to cover Mom's medical costs was when I was 31. Mom had ended up in the ER after a doctor prescribed a medication that interacted badly with another drug she was already taking. Monica promised she would handle the hospital that weekend because I had a work certification program and couldn't miss the exam review. I still came by every night with food and a notebook. On the second night, I noticed the nurse had an outdated medication list. I corrected it. The next morning, I found out the copay hadn't been paid because Monica thought the bill would work itself out. It did not. I paid it from my emergency fund, standing at a kiosk by the elevators, while Monica cried in the chapel, and Patricia told everyone Monica had hardly left Elaine's side. When Mom was discharged, I kept the faded hospital bracelet she had removed in the car because that whole week stayed with me. I kept thinking how close we had come to a worse outcome because one daughter performed concern while another read labels. That bracelet became my private reminder that caring is not who looks most broken in the hallway. Caring is who notices the dosage is wrong before the body pays for it. In the years after that, the pattern hardened. Monica posted tearful selfies from hospital rooms, therapy waiting areas, and hard family days. I paid balances, appealed claims, corrected errors, scheduled transport, and created medication charts on color-coded spreadsheets because nobody else could be trusted to read milligrams without turning it into a personal drama. Dad would call me when there was a crisis, but if I asked for receipts or timelines, Monica would sigh and say, "Rebecca, not everything is a legal case." Patricia would say, "Your tone is exhausting." Mom would apologize to me privately and then, in public, allow the family to continue treating me like the dependable daughter whose competence canceled her right to feel hurt. When Mom's knee started failing and the orthopedic consult led to surgery, I knew exactly what would happen before it happened. Monica would make the whole thing emotional theater. Dad would ask me to keep the peace. Patricia would accuse me of turning recovery into logistics. And I would end up handling the logistics anyway because otherwise, Mom would suffer for their preferences. I started by gathering records, imaging results, specialist notes, prior authorization requirements, physical therapy recommendations, medication conflicts, surgical estimate, pre-op instructions, transportation plan, home safety checklist for recovery. Monica announced on Facebook that she was walking every step of this journey with Mom. I was sitting on hold with the insurer because someone in the orthopedic office had submitted an incomplete procedure code. When the denial came through, Monica posted a quote about faith. I wrote the appeal. When the hospital called for the deposit, Dad said he was short until the end of the month, and Monica said surgery should not be about money right now. I paid it because delaying would have meant a worse recovery window. Then I emailed both of them the amount and the due date if they wanted to split it later. Monica never answered the email. Dad sent back, "We'll settle up, don't start." That was always his phrase, "Don't start." As if asking adults to acknowledge a number was the same as starting a fight. A week before surgery, I discovered Monica had tried to change the patient contact hierarchy in Mom's online hospital portal. I only noticed because a billing notice I expected never appeared. When I logged in to check the surgical estimate, my access had been reduced. I called the portal help desk, and the woman on the line casually said another family contact had requested updates go to Monica's email to make things easier. Easier for whom? I asked if any billing correspondence had also been redirected. The representative said some communications had. My jaw tightened so hard it hurt. I restored what I could, but by then I knew Monica was not just playing devoted daughter. She was trying to manage visibility. Later, I would learn she wanted the bills and medical updates flowing through channels she controlled because she hated being the daughter whose emotional performance had to compete with proof. At the time, I only knew something felt slippery. I called Mom that night. She sounded tired but clear. "Monica means well," she said. "I know," I answered, and we both sat in the silence of that lie. Then she said quietly, "I trust the daughter who reads before signing." I almost asked whether she had made anything official. I didn't. I wish I had. The morning of surgery, I arrived before everyone else except the intake nurse. I had already printed the updated medication list and the insurer approval confirmation because I no longer trusted anyone to keep digital records straight when pressure rose. Mom squeezed my hand in pre-op and looked past me toward the curtain opening and closing behind the nurse's station. "Don't let them turn this into a pageant," she whispered. I smiled and told her I was there. Monica arrived 20 minutes later in a cloud of urgency, carrying coffee she didn't offer anyone and wiping at dry tears. Dad came with that worn expression men wear when they plan to contribute almost nothing except the request that women not upset each other around him. Patricia came because she wouldn't have stayed home during something this serious, which in practice meant she sat down, clutched her purse, and started making character judgments. The first 30 minutes were tense but manageable. I reviewed the consent packet to confirm it matched the updated surgeon notes. Monica kept trying to take it from my hands, saying, "I've got it." She did not have it. She did not even notice one page still listed the old blood thinner dosage. I flagged it and got it corrected. Monica rolled her eyes and muttered, "This is why everyone thinks you're difficult." Then, when the nurse said only 2 family members could come into the consultation room for the final pre-op discussion, Monica physically shifted in front of me and delivered the line I can still hear in my sleep. "Rebecca, you're just the wallet. Don't confuse paying bills with being Mom's real support." Then, louder, because cruelty likes an audience, she added, "Let people who actually comfort her make the decisions." Dad said, "Maybe let Monica go in this time, Becca." Patricia shook her head at me like I was the disruptive one. The nurse looked uncomfortable, but she didn't know our history. She only knew there was a family conflict 20 feet from a surgery room. I could have made a scene. I didn't. I stepped back, because the last thing I wanted was Mom hearing raised voices before anesthesia. Monica took that as victory. She went inside with Dad. Patricia stayed outside to monitor me. I stood in that hallway with Mom's old bracelet in my palm and felt something inside me go from hurt to cold focus. Not because I stopped loving my family in that moment, because I stopped expecting love to be enough protection against people who benefited from my silence. While Mom was in surgery, Monica posted a picture of the waiting room coffee cup with the caption, "Holding Mom through this hard morning. Pray for us." She had been in the consultation room for less than 20 minutes. I spent the same hour on the phone with billing because the inpatient estimate still reflected the wrong deductible stage, and if it wasn't corrected before discharge, Mom would be fighting a false balance for months. Around noon, while Monica was giving Patricia updates dramatic enough to sound like bedside war reporting, my phone buzzed with an email from a nurse case manager named Laura Jensen. The subject line read, "Care Coordination for Elaine Hayes, Legal Decision Maker Follow-Up." I opened it and read the first line twice. "As the designated medical decision maker for Ms. Hayes, we need your confirmation on the post-operative care preference noted in her file." I stared at the screen so long, Monica asked what was wrong. I didn't answer. The email went on to say the hospital file included a valid medical power of attorney naming me as primary decision-maker, and that the surgeon's coordinator wanted to review a rehab versus home health plan before discharge planning. My whole body went still. Mom had done it. She had not just trusted me in whispers, she had signed it. More than that, she had filed it. Monica was still talking, still shaping herself into the center of the tragedy, and I realized that while she was busy guarding doors, the hospital had already recognized the person Mom trusted to make decisions. I stepped away, called the number in the email, and reached Laura Jensen, who confirmed there was a medical power of attorney on file, executed months earlier during a prior care planning update. She sounded surprised that I seemed surprised. Ms. Hayes listed you as primary decision-maker and primary hospital communication contact, she said. There was some recent attempt to revise the patient contact sequence, but legal decision authority follows the document. Some recent attempt? Monica. I asked for a copy and for the patient advocate office number. That was how Karen Whitlock came into my life at exactly the right moment. Karen was a hospital patient advocate and former nurse with the calm, direct tone of a woman who had watched too many families turn medicine into theater. I told her what had happened, about being blocked from the room, about the email, about the redirected billing notices, and she said, "Documents matter. Emotions matter too, but they don't outrank documents. Let's make sure your mother's wishes are followed." That sentence felt like oxygen. The surgery went well enough, but the post-op decisions required speed. Mom would need either short-term rehab or structured home recovery with very specific medication management and mobility support. Monica kept talking like she was in charge. "Mom wants to be home with family," she announced to Patricia. "We'll decide." We. I thought about the medication chart I had prepared, the post-op risk notes, the physical therapy recommendations, the fact that Monica once missed an antibiotic dose window during Mom's last recovery because she lost track of time while filming a church testimony video about caregiving. I did not say anything in the waiting room. I drove home with a copy of the Medical POA in my bag, Mom's bracelet in my pocket, and a new kind of anger in my chest. Not hot anger, useful anger, the kind that files, dates, and prints. That night, I spread everything across my dining table. Paid invoices, insurance appeal emails, pharmacy logs, medication schedule texts, surgical deposit receipt, hospital portal screenshots showing contact changes, Monica's posts, Dad's voicemails, Karen's email, Laura Jensen's care coordination note, the signed medical power of attorney. And then, tucked inside the scanned document packet, a note in Mom's handwriting. When people panic, they listen to the loudest voice. I trust the daughter who reads before signing. I sat there and cried harder than I had in that hospital hallway, because it wasn't just a document. It was my mother leaving a breadcrumb trail out of a family story that had always treated me like the practical backup character. That night at 10:49 p.m., Monica called. Her voice hit the line already sharpened. "What did you show the hospital?" There was no greeting, no concern for Mom's surgery, just panic. I put her on speaker because Karen had told me not to handle further family conversations without preserving clarity, and Dad was in the room with me anyway by then, because he had come over after I texted him that we needed to talk. "I showed them nothing they didn't already have," I said. Silence. Then Monica blurted, "I needed you out of that room before the doctors saw the POA." She heard herself too late. Dad closed his eyes. I looked at him, and that expression on his face said he had known enough to be ashamed without knowing enough to stop her. "So you knew," I said. Monica started backtracking. "Mom was confused when she signed that. She said things all the time." No nurse, no doctor, and no signed revocation says that, I answered. Patricia, who was apparently there with her, grabbed the phone and hissed, Rebecca, do not turn surgery into a paperwork contest. Monica is fragile. Elaine needs peace. I looked at the paid invoices on my table. Peace would have been not calling me the wallet after I paid the deposit. Dad finally spoke. Becca, maybe we can all just talk tomorrow. I said, no, we talk now, and then tomorrow we talk in writing. I gave them 72 hours. Correct the family narrative, disclose any hospital communications Monica had redirected, stop misrepresenting authority, reimburse the bills they had promised to split, stop posting updates that implied Monica was the legal decision-maker. If they wanted a say in the recovery plan, they could attend a formal care plan meeting with the patient advocate, case manager, billing supervisor, and surgeon's coordinator. Monica started crying. You're making Mom's surgery about your ego. I picked up Mom's note and read the line out loud. I trust the daughter who reads before signing. Then I said, I'm making Mom's surgery about what she signed before any of you tried to turn it into a pageant. Patricia called me cruel. Monica posted before midnight that some people choose paperwork over a vulnerable patient's peace. By morning, relatives were texting me that I was controlling, cold, jealous of Monica's closeness with Mom, and weaponizing documents during a family crisis. Monica had already started telling people that Mom emotionally preferred her and that I could not handle being the less loved daughter, so I was hiding behind legal papers. That one hit harder than I wanted to admit, because every responsible daughter carries a private fear that maybe practicality really does make her easier to overlook. I almost called Karen to say I couldn't do it, couldn't fight in a hospital while Mom was recovering. Instead, I opened Mom's note again, held the old bracelet, and reminded myself that protecting a patient's written wishes is not a vanity project. It is care. Karen called before I lost my nerve. The surgeon's coordinator wants the care plan meeting tomorrow, she said. Can you come? Yes, I answered. Then she added, Rebecca, families often call women cold when those women are the only ones standing between a patient and chaos. I wrote that down. The private truth room happened at my apartment the night before the hospital meeting. Dad came. Monica came because she still believed she could push emotion harder than I could push records. Patricia came because, of course she did. Karen joined by speakerphone for the first 20 minutes to clarify process. On my table, I laid out the hospital bracelet, the paid bills, the insurance appeals, the corrected medication list, the surgery consent revision, the hospital portal logs showing contact changes, Monica's public posts, the Medical POA, and Mom's handwritten note. Monica walked in, saw the papers, and laughed bitterly. You only paid a few bills, she said. Don't act like you carried this. I slid the invoices forward one by one. Surgical deposit, prior hospital balance, prescription copays, physical therapy intake fee, home transport reservation. Then I placed the appeal emails beside them showing my name, timestamps, call notes, and approval overturn documentation. I paid the bills you said should not matter, I told her. I won the appeal you said was too negative to focus on. I corrected the medication you never read. I arranged the transport you forgot. And when the hospital needed a legal decision maker, they emailed me because Mom named me. Dad put his hands over his face. Patricia snapped, Monica comforts her. That matters. I didn't say it doesn't, I answered. I said it doesn't override what Mom signed. Monica looked at the POA and tried her next lie. Mom verbally changed her mind. Karen's voice came through the speaker calm and flat. Then there would need to be a new executed document or supported clinical record if capacity was in question. Emotional impressions are not legal revocations. Monica flushed. Dad said, "Mon, did you know about this?" She looked at him and said nothing. That silence was answer enough. I then laid out the portal logs and the billing redirect notes. "You tried to move hospital communication away from me after I paid the balance," I said. Monica rolled her eyes. "I was simplifying things. You are controlling visibility." Patricia accused me of humiliating my sister. I pointed to the post on Monica's page where she had written, "Holding mom through surgery while others focus on forms." She humiliated me in a public hospital hallway and then online, I said. I am simply bringing the record into the room. Dad finally asked the one question I had needed from him for years. "What do you want, Rebecca?" It should not have felt like such a victory that he asked instead of assuming. "I want mom's wishes followed. I want billing authority corrected. I want the rehab decision made from facts, not performance. I want reimbursement for what you said you'd split. And I want all of you to stop acting like the daughter who reads, pays, and protects is somehow less loving than the one who posts." Monica cried harder then, but it didn't move me the way it once would have. Not because I had become heartless, because I could finally see the machinery. She cried when the room stopped rewarding her certainty. Dad promised we would talk more after the hospital meeting. Patricia told me I was making Elaine's recovery harder. Karen ended the speaker call by saying, "No, Patricia, confusion makes recovery harder. Clarity usually helps." The next morning, I walked into the patient advocate office carrying the same folder and wearing the same quiet I'd spent years building out of necessity. Present were Karen, the surgeon's coordinator, the billing supervisor, the nurse case manager Laura Jensen, my father, Monica, Patricia, and me. Monica arrived in a pale sweater and wounded expression, ready to perform the misunderstood caregiver. The billing supervisor began by reviewing account access corrections, which immediately exposed that some notices had been rerouted. Monica said she had only been trying to reduce stress. Laura Jensen then reviewed the care plan issue and confirmed that the hospital's legal file listed me as the primary medical decision-maker under a valid medical power of attorney executed when Mom had full documented capacity. Monica said, "Mom wanted me there emotionally." Karen answered, "This meeting is not about who she likes when she is scared. It is about who she appointed to make decisions when she is vulnerable." That line silenced even Patricia. Then Monica tried the verbal revocation lie again. The surgeon's coordinator shook her head gently. "There is no chart notation, no updated document, and no clinical basis to ignore the existing POA. That was the first time I saw Monica realize she had entered a room where crying would not rewrite a signature. I placed the POA on the table beside the paid invoices, the appeal documents, and printed screenshots of Monica's social media posts. "You said I only paid a few bills," I told her. "You said I was just the wallet. Here's the wallet. Here are the bills. Here are the appeals. Here is the document Mom signed. And here are the posts where you made yourself look like the one carrying all of it while I was fixing everything you called cold." Dad stared at the papers. Laura Jensen confirmed that Mom's written preference, documented during earlier care planning, was short-term rehab if mobility and pain management made home recovery unsafe. Monica had been telling everyone Mom would come home because family heals best together. In truth, Mom had said the opposite. She didn't want to burden anyone with improvised care if a structured facility would give her a stronger recovery start. Karen asked if anyone disputed that the written preference existed. Nobody could. Patricia muttered that paperwork drains the humanity out of families. I answered, "Medical paperwork is only cold to people who planned to ignore it." Karen almost smiled. The face slap moment came when Monica tried once more to dismiss my role. Rebecca paid some invoices. That doesn't make her mom's whole support system. I lifted Mom's old bracelet from the folder and set it on top of the note she had written. Care is not who cries the loudest in the waiting room, I said. Care is who notices when the medication is wrong, who fights the denial, who pays the deposit, who shows up with the right documents, and who protects the wishes Mom signed when the rest of you were too busy performing grief. Then I read Mom's line aloud. I trust the daughter who reads before signing. Monica looked away. Dad cried quietly for the first time I can remember seeing him cry without trying to turn away. The outcome was not dramatic because the truth often sounds dull when it wins. The hospital recognized me formally as the legal medical decision-maker. Billing access was corrected. Rehab placement followed Mom's written preference. Monica lost informal control over updates. Karen required that future family updates go through a documented communication plan rather than Monica's social media feed. The billing supervisor flagged the split payment discussion so the unpaid family promises became visible rather than living forever in "we'll settle up later." Monica's planned church testimony about carrying Mom through surgery was canceled after Dad, to his credit, finally admitted she had not been the decision-maker. Patricia told everyone the hospital had become too bureaucratic. I considered that a compliment. The hardest moment came 2 days later, when I saw Mom post-op and more lucid. I sat beside her rehab bed with the bracelet in my hand and told her the truth in the gentlest version I could. Monica tried to shut me out, I said. The hospital found your POA. Mom closed her eyes, tired but aware. Good, she whispered. I knew they would listen to the loudest voice unless I left paper. Then she squeezed my fingers and said, I'm sorry you needed it. That apology healed something I hadn't realized was still bleeding. She did not apologize for loving Monica. She apologized for understanding the pattern and needing a document to protect me from it. That mattered more than 1,000 public speeches ever could have. Monica and Dad both called after the care plan meeting. Dad wanted peace. Monica wanted me to sign a temporary release so she could speak for the family without feeling undermined. I said no to both in different ways. Dad's peace had cost me too much for too long. Monica's family speaking role had been built on erasing the daughter who did the actual work. Over the next few weeks, I managed Mom's rehab plan, corrected an insurance issue with the skilled nursing authorization, arranged home safety equipment for discharge, and documented every bill. Dad started paying me back in installments. Not because he became transformed overnight, but because he finally understood there was no emotional fog thick enough to hide numbers from me anymore. Monica stayed angry longer. She posted less. She called me controlling. Then, when Mom came home and the daily reality of meds, therapy schedules, follow-up appointments, and equipment deliveries replaced the glamour of hospital selfies, Monica quietly began forwarding practical questions to me again. This time, I answered selectively, and always in writing. The family had taught me that being useful without boundaries turns kindness into infrastructure. I refused to be infrastructure anymore. Karen stayed in my life after Mom's recovery because some people arrive in your story as witnesses and end up becoming anchors. She invited me to speak at a caregiver support nonprofit 3 months later about medical paperwork, family politics, and why adult children need to document care before crisis turns memory into theater. I almost said no. I did not want to become the woman whose sister banned her from the surgery room. Karen said, "Then don't teach humiliation. Teach preparation." So that is what I did. We built the hospital bracelet caregiver guide together. It started as one workshop and grew because far too many adult daughters, sons, spouses, and siblings had stories that sounded different on the surface but identical underneath. One person performed concern. Another person handled every practical burden. Then crisis came, and the wrong voice almost took control because the right one had not been documented. We taught people how to understand medical POA, organize hospital bills, track medication changes, fight insurance denials, preserve portal access, document caregiving labor, and keep patient wishes in writing before illness turned truth into a popularity contest. The first line of the guide was Mom's. I trust the daughter who reads before signing. The second line was mine. They called me the wallet when the surgery bill arrived, then called me cruel when the hospital read the POA. At the first workshop, I placed Mom's old bracelet on the table. A man in the back told us his sister had locked him out of their father's care plan after he paid for every home aid. A woman in the front said her brother posted hospice photos while she handled morphine logs and funeral deposits. Another said no one believed she was the true caregiver because she was the organized one. We gave them scripts. Please send me that in writing. Who is the legal decision maker on file? Where are the paid invoices? What are the patient's written wishes? Simple sentences. Life-saving ones. The real revenge was never making Monica feel small. The real revenge was ending the family lie that tenderness only counts when it is loud. It was making systems, documents, and patient wishes speak where my own voice had been dismissed for too many years. It was knowing that my mother got the recovery plan she actually wanted because I stopped apologizing for being the daughter who understood paper. I still keep that old bracelet in a drawer beside the first copy of the POA and Mom's handwritten note. Sometimes before a workshop, I hold it and remember the surgery hallway, Monica's body blocking the door, Patricia's expression, Dad's silence, and the sting of hearing myself called the wallet after carrying my mother through every invisible part of her care. Then I remember the patient advocate office, the POA on the table, the rehab order going through, and the moment the room finally had to admit what my mother had known all along. A family that calls you cold for protecting a patient's signed wishes does not want peace. It wants control without accountability. I was not trying to control Mom. I was protecting the wishes she signed when everyone else was too busy performing grief. If your family treated you like a bank account in the crisis, and a villain the moment the paperwork proved you mattered, would you still call that love? And if the bracelet that once marked your mother's vulnerability became the tool you use to teach other caregivers that love must be documented before illness turns truth into a performance contest, would you hide it away to keep louder people comfortable? Or would you place it on the table and let every signature finally speak?